Come on, you sissy, be a man. Don't cry. Grow some muscle, you puny wimp. Real men are ripped. Kick his ass. What? You ate a salad? Fucking rabbit food. Real men eat meat, and only meat, cooked over a fire on a stick. You want that woman? Fucking fuck her. What? She said no? So what? Inside every no is a yes waiting to come out. You just gotta get it out of her by getting it in her. Know what I mean? We all know what toxic masculinity is. Or do we? Why is it suddenly a thing the media is obsessed with? And is it really a new phenomenon at all? Where does it come from? Is it simply an inherent aspect of being a male? How is it taught? How is it reinforced? How is it represented in the stories we read and watch? How do we diffuse it? What is the antidote? Join me and my intrepid co-host, Jenn Zuko, as well as some other guests, as we embark on another semi-drunken exploration of the intersection of literature and society as we discuss problematic, toxic masculinity tropes. Okay, so we're going to have a fun time tonight because we don't have an essay and we don't have an outline.
No, I mean, besides what you and I have maybe done singularly.
Yes. So
without consulting each other, but I don't got jack shit. I just have the idea.
So,
I got the concept.
Okay. So in this case, I think it would actually be a good idea because I have an idea of what the concept is. Of what I think the concept is, judging from the paragraph description that you had, which I'm trying to find because I can't remember it off the top of my head, from the Writers HQ website.
No, it wouldn't be on there. It would be on my blog.
Oh, so that's why I'm having a hard time finding it.
Yes, because it is not on Writers HQ. Writers HQ is the one who is publishing them. But they are on hiatus with me right now, so they do not have any of them after
where
James Bond.
On Daily Cross Swords do I find that then?
Just do a search for problematic masculinity, and you'll find it probably. You may have to scroll, but...
Problematic mask.
I'm so fucking tired right now. Oh, my God. I'm just going to whine at your listeners while you're looking up the paragraph.
What's, why are you so tired today?
Oh, I had really bad sleep this whole weekend.
Oh.
It was a weekend of much emotional sortings out.
Right.
So.
Okay, I've got it here. So for the sake of the listeners, let's go with the paragraph that you had. Now, if they're looking at, if they happen to be looking at or have found your list of tropes for this series on your website, Daily Cross Swords, they'll notice that we've flipped 7 and 6.
Yes. Oh, that's a good point. Yes, we need to make that clear. And we should tell them why. Because it was your idea, and I totes endorse it. I think it's a great idea, and I think you're right about it.
You had as number 6, which would have been originally been tonight's discussion, the trope violence is normal.
Yes.
And my suggestion was that should be moved to number 7 because that one kind of encompasses a little bit of everything. It encompasses
all of them pretty much.
And if we put Mr. Mom last, that kind of is slipping back into something else.
Right.
And so if we flip Mr. Mom, it pairs better following Sassy Gay Friend. Then we go to Violence is Normal and we take a look at how every other trope leads to this one.
Yeah, and how number 7 kind of, like you said, it encompasses all of them in a certain way, too.
Right.
It sort of has reflections. The gem of the trope has facets of every one of the 7.
Correct. So if you're looking on Jen's website, Mr. Mom is...
tired.
Yeah, Mr. Mom is listed as number 7, not number 6. And here we are in episode 6. So Jen's description, her original idea for Mr. Mom, do you want to read it or shall I? I have it up.
I don't have it in front of me, so since you have it up, why don't you read it and then I'll explain.
Okay. Mr. Mom, lol. Men can't be good parents. The awful trope of the bumbling dad, nothing more than another child for moms to manage, is the trope on this list that angers me personally the most. Look for some heartfelt angry rants in this article, readers. That's it.
Yeah. Okay. So the basic idea is it is lol. Men can't be parents.
Right.
And it has two aspects of that. One is that, oh no, we left the dad alone with the kids.
Right.
Or the whole thing about, oh, are you babysitting today? It's like, no, I'm fucking parenting. I'm their father. I'm parenting. Or like, this happens a lot actually, as far as like pop culture and entertainment and media go. I see this trope. This is really interesting. I see this trope most often in commercials.
Yes.
And often commercials aimed at women.
Correct.
But really commercials in general. It's like, oh, my husband,
right.
He just can't do the laundry, but even he can do it with this laundry detergent, like all that kind of bullshit, right? Like men can't be domestic. They can't parent by themselves. There's actually a real recent one where it's like, I don't know if it's a smart speaker of some kind. I don't know what brand it is, but it's like mom going, "You're doing great." It's like mom's voice, like giving dad. Guides
it's for like Alexa or one of those home.
Is it for Alexa?
Kits or something like Google?
Yeah, it's like for a smart speaker. Yeah, or Google Home or something like that. So yeah, and so it's just like, "You're doing great, honey." Like he's a fucking infant himself and can't take care of his baby.
Pacifiers in the freezer or something like that.
Yeah, remember where things are. And it's just the reason I talk about how personally affected I get by is because my partner, Paul, who we talked about in a couple episodes ago, is a fantastic father. And he's actually the nurturer of his family. And in fact, I wanted him to come on tonight, but he's, guess what? Parenting right now. Yay! So he can't actually come on. And actually part of what he said, which was really funny, obviously he's not going to have time to come on because he's, guess what? Being a good father, which men in real life are all the time.
Correct.
So he's doing that now, but he's also like, I also kind of don't want to talk about parenting in front of the people that I'm parenting. It's kind of like a rule of thumb. I'd rather not be talking about my parenting of them in front of them. Yep. I was like, you know what? That is a really good point. And since I am not a parent myself, then I didn't even occur to me. So And you should know, too, listeners, that neither Jason Quinn Malott nor I, Jenn Zuko, are fathers. So we kind of don't have that particular perspective. But the men that I know that are parents are good parents and attentive parents, but they still get the, oh, are you babysitting bullshit? Right. Sometimes. And they also, it seems to me that their reaction to this trope is less, it's anger to a certain extent. But it's almost more like they just have to roll their eyes. They can't really do anything about it because what are they going to do? What are they going to say? You know? Right. So it's two-pronged. It's one, men can't parent, which also turns into men can't be nurturers. Men aren't the nurturers. Moms are the nurturers. Men, but and the other part of that two-pronged thing is men aren't. Like they're authority figures in other ways. Like they can go out to the grill in the yard and do that part, but they can't manage a household. That's still women's work. And men can't do women's work. They get overwhelmed. And then the mom has to roll her eyes and go, well, I just have to take care of my husband too, because he's just another one of my kids, which is bullshit. I mean, I'm sure that happens all the time in real life, but it's really unfair to men. It negates their ability to nurture. And not only that, but it negates their strength in that kind of nurturing sort of aspect. Right. It limits their access to their children. It makes them think that, hey, being a dad is like throwing the ball outside with your son. You know, you get to be doing the grill, and if you are the one that has to do the dishes because your wife assigned you to do it, you're gonna fuck it up because you're just like another kid. Right. And I think that's just insulting and ridiculous. And there we go. I haven't actually seen Mr. Mom either. I just thought that was a cute name for this trope.
So that's what I found interesting is one, I think kind of the embodiment, the version of this trope is the 1983 movie starring Michael Keaton and Terry Garr called Mr. Mom, which you haven't seen, have you?
No, I haven't. It's
if you happen to have an Amazon account, you can rent it for $1.99.
Oh, well, okay. Okay, cool.
Right. And give it a look. And also I
will do
sent
that when I do my research for the article.
And also that the Mr. Mom movie has been rebooted as a short series on Vudu.
Yeah.
The streaming
you
service.
did
I sent you a link to
me.
that. And again, that one's Vudu is free and you can watch this series for free.
Yep.
They're like little 10-minute episodes.
But they are. Oh, okay.
Right. So it's real easy to watch.
Have you watched any of them?
Yes, I have. It's I've watched about 3 or 4 of them. So it's a short little series, and it's kind of this modernized version of the same story. Husband loses his job.
Okay.
Mom goes out to support the family. But so real quick, what I'll do, just for the sake of this, before I get into kind of my understanding of the trope, which is very similar to yours, so we're not going to have the kind of disagreement we had with number 5.
Right, good. That's this one should be a pretty easy one, right?
Yep. So 1983 version of Mr. Mom. Oddly enough, it was written by John Hughes.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I don't know that I ever knew that.
Yeah. So it's a Hughes movie.
And so is the series then? Does it take place in 2019?
No. The 1983 movie is John Hughes. The modern 2019 television series. I don't know who's writing that.
No, I know. But my question is, so this is interesting to me though, because then there'd be a very major societal cultural thing, because in 83 it was still considered very unusual for the woman to be even out into the working world, let alone being the sole breadwinner. But today, that's a lot more common. So I'm just wondering how they treat that. It's a lot more common, but the
tropes are still different. We'll get to the TV series here in a minute.
Oh, okay.
But I'm going to give you a synopsis of the 1983 movie.
Okay, thank you.
Or not a synopsis so much as a breakdown of the plot structure. Where I'll show you about this, because this is
like I said, basic. Okay.
The 1983 movie was written and I think directed by John Hughes, prior to getting into his teen movie Spectrum thing.
Yeah, it's like right before that.
It stars Michael Keaton and Terry Garr. And at the beginning of the movie, Keaton is an automobile engineer. He's a car engineer.
Mm-hmm.
And Terry Garr is a stay-at-home mom. They have 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl. And what kicks everything off in the movie is of course Keaton.
Wait, are they young enough that they're all at home all the time, or do some of them go to school?
One goes to school, the other 2 are preschool.
At home. Okay.
One's the little daughter is an infant.
Okay. Oh, I see. Okay.
Cannot walk on her own. She's got that's
baby,
part of
baby.
One of the scenes. One of the funny scenes in the movie is she's running around in her little walker stroller thing, where she's they're able to, you put them in like a little suspension chair and the legs just go and they can run into things. Anyway, so he loses his job with the automobile company that he works for, and they're trying to figure out how they're going to support the family. So they place a bet. And he says that he places a bet with his wife won't do it, but he places a bet. He's got $100 to his wife's $1 that he can find a job before she does.
Oh,
but of course, she finds the job first, and so starts working for an ad agency. She had been to college and had all this had an education, but had decided to stay home and raise the kids because in the early 80s it was possible to do that.
Yeah. You still could get by on one income at that time.
So she goes to work for an ad agency, which is run by a character played by Martin Mull. Fantastic.
Oh, Martin Mull.
Right.
All right.
And there's when she starts her job, there's the classic thing, the fish out of water. She doesn't quite know what she's doing there.
Sure.
Because she's been a woman out of the workforce for so long, and it's just, and the ad agency is very much a boys' club. There's this one scene where she
walks, a total Mad Men scenario, probably.
Walks into a conference room, and it's like the conference table where they're discussing some of their products they're advertising is like littered with fast food. Everybody's smoking, and she comes in with like housewife wisdom, right? One of the accounts they're struggling with is schooner tuna. They don't quite know how to market this tuna.
Oh, and she's like, hey, I am someone who watches those commercials all the time. I know exactly the kinds of things that I would respond to. Hey, what kind of wine are you drinking, by the way?
It's called Embrazen.
Oh.
Anyway.
Because you're being brazen. Okay.
Yep.
I just needed to know. Please go on.
And of course, Dad starts, doing the home stuff.
Right.
Right.
And Dad also is fish out of water, right? Because he doesn't know what to do.
And he quickly flounders. There's the great scene. Speaking of fish.
He flounders.
Yeah. When did you start drinking?
just now.
Oh, okay. So anyway, he quickly flounders, and there's a great scene where he goes to do laundry, and he overloads the laundry. He does some weird chemical experiment where he's got detergent and bleach and spray and wash. It all puts it in one big cup and then puts into the washing machine. And there's this whole thing where the washing machine seems to be alive, and it's dancing around the basement, and it scares the kids, and it scares an exterminator plumber that comes by, you know. And
it's
eventually,
like an I Love Lucy situation.
Right. And eventually the washing machine is so unbalanced that it walks itself away from the wall and disconnects from the water pipes. So there's these hoses flying around, and he has to come in and fight it and put it all down, you know. So he's busy bumbling through this, and she's bumbling through job. But then everybody then she hits her stride at work, right? Mm-hmm. She begins to contribute and do stuff like that. He, on the other hand, starts to flounder and become depressed. There's this whole sequence where he's grown out his beard, you know, and the house is a mess, and he's getting addicted to soap operas, right? There's one really scene. Sad. There's one scene where he's stuck in the kitchen. He's got the ironing board in the kitchen. There's just dirty dishes and empty boxes and stuff floating around. You know, he's got the TV on the stove, and he's watching the soap operas, and the kid comes in, and the kid is filthy. He's got food smeared all over his face, and his dad goes, and he says to his dad, you know, this grilled cheese sandwich is cold, and the cheese only melted on one side. So he throws the sandwich down on the ironing board and sticks the iron on it. And then picks it up and goes, here you go. And this cheese is still stuck to the iron. So he peels it off and gives it to the kid. And the kid looks at it like, what the hell? As if the kid shouldn't already be going, what the hell with this stuff on my face, Dad?
Right, yeah.
Right.
I think that was the main scene that was shown like a lot for that, like in trailers and stuff like that.
And so, you know, Mom starts to have a big success at work. She gets promoted, all this other good stuff. Dad has there's this weird mid-movie dream sequence where Michael Keaton falls asleep watching the soap opera, and this single mother that's a friend of his and his wife's comes by, and she's been kind of like hitting on him, and you know, she's the one that shows her boobs, you know, down her cleavage through the whole movie or whatever. And she stumbles in lingerie and a trench coat, and they start to, you know, kiss. And that's when Terry Garr comes home, and they end up having this scene where she shoots him, and this comedic thing where he falls down on the floor and is supposed to land in the chalk outline of his body, but he misses it by a few inches. So he gets up and, you know, slides over into it.
Really?
And then there's this scene where the various people that have been around and watched him die come in and say, oh, you know, look at this poor sod, you know, and stuff like this. And he wakes up from that and thinks, I need to get my shit together. Right. And so he starts to succeed as a homemaker, but in uniquely masculine ways. They don't show him doing womanly house chores like doing the laundry successfully or washing the kids or getting them to school. He like paints a fence, right? And he attaches a remote control to the vacuum cleaner, which the wife had dubbed Jaws previously. And he's like got the vacuum cleaner just remotely like a robot going around and cleaning the stuff in the house.
So he's doing the women's work
in a manly way.
In a manly way, right? Mm-hmm,
you know, and instead of sitting around talking to the other housewives who are home, you know, doing childcare the way he is, he gets them into the house to do aerobics and exercise because, you know, you have to be in shape.
Yeah,
right? And still, as he's getting them in shape, he sneaks around the corner at one point to drink a beer, right? Then what happens, the big crux of the whole movie has to do with Mom at work, you know, wins this big account. She steps in at the last minute and saves their Schooner Tuna account because, you know, the CEO of the company hates every ad idea that's been thrown at him by the rest of the company. And she walks in and she says, you know, and her comment is, have any of you ever been, you know, in a supermarket and bought this stuff for your kids? Because your tuna is actually one of the top 3 most expensive tunas in the country right now. So if you want to do advertising, and she pulls out, you know, these giveaways that the company tried to get people to buy their tuna, and how they got stuck with, you know, several 100,000 glasses that they were giving away and several 100,000 like, you know, flour lays they were supposed to give to people for a trip to Hawaii, and they got stuck with it because nobody was buying or entering the contest. So she comes up with this ad idea to, lower the cost of schooner tuna by 50 cents a can. In 1983, that would have been a huge amount of money.
That's a lot. Yeah.
And because it's 83, it's hard economic times. Reaganomics hadn't fully kicked in yet. People were still struggling, blah, blah, blah. And this saves the schooner tuna account for this ad agency she works with. And so what happens is she goes off at the last minute to supervise the filming of the commercial for schooner tuna. And Martin Mull, her boss, makes a pass at her in her hotel room, complete with champagne or wearing bathrobes, whatever. And while he's doing that, Michael Keaton's character calls the hotel room, and Mull answers it, and hangs up on him. And he's convinced that his wife is having an affair with the boss. She's been sexually assaulted, more or less, and has punched Martin Mull in the face because she won't have it, right? Anyway, she punches him and quits, which is what most women should do when they're sexually assaulted, if they have the ability to leave their job, which oftentimes they don't, which leads to the problems that we have.
Right.
Because, of course,
they can't go to HR.
Right. And at the same time, the guy that fired Michael Keaton's character from his job at the automotive plant has been called out for cooking the books, basically, for his department. And so he comes back to Mike. So the climax of the movie is he comes back to Keaton and offers him his job back at twice the salary in a company car.
Oh.
And Terry Garr has quit her job because she was sexually assaulted. And at the end of the movie, you're right back to where you began. Husband at work, wife at home. It reestablishes the whole patriarchal structure. And there's
Have we learned a lesson?
Right. We haven't learned any kind of lesson at all.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
It does, in a way, pander to the idea of feminism in that era, in that, she's sexually assaulted and she immediately, punches the guy, and she's justifiably so. Nobody's angry at her for punching him because he was...
No, but that means that she doesn't belong in the workplace, though.
Right. And it's almost as if it's kind of condoning, this is, women don't belong here because men will just be sexually aggressive.
Exactly. You can't. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, right. Anyway.
And the other characters' interesting, more manly ways of doing the housework probably wasn't like as efficient or...
Well, it wasn't as nurturing because kind of the kids take a background, seat once he starts to control the house in a manly fashion.
Well, that makes sense, like for comedy. Like I can see how
right.
like the emphasis would be on what's the weird shit he's going to do to control the vacuum or whatever. And so that's right. That totally right. Okay, so I'm glad I named this trope in an appropriate way. I was worried that like the movie wasn't really talking about the trope very much.
No, it's not. Because it kind of does. Because the way I read the whole Mr. Mom trope, having seen that movie, and I actually just finished rewatching it today, and I've been rewatching the 2019 series on Vudu.
Nice.
So basically the Mr. Mom trope is the feminizing of the male by being demeaned to do women's work, caring for children, being supported by a wife who, in the way that a man would traditionally support a family.
That being domesticated is a demeaning thing.
Right. Yeah. And so this gender role flipping is presented as comedy, where the man is awful at it, or if not awful, he does it in a uniquely masculine manner.
Which is funny.
Which just turns into comedy.
And he's not just a good dad. Right.
But here's the thing about it, is that in both cases, in either way, it's presented as a form of bottom-up patriarchy that panders to and heightens our idea of misandry on behalf of women.
Right,
and this is kind of where I've been thinking about, because it really plays back into that book we talked about before, My Enemy, My Love, by Judith Levine. Uh-huh. Right. And misandry in a patriarchal system is actually a safety valve, an emotional safety valve for women. Because patriarchy is all about oppressing the women, decreasing their value. And the way Judith Levine talks about misandry or man-hating is that this allows women a means to carve out an arena of superiority, which is the domestic sphere.
Yeah, and this is the part where we do it well and you don't, like that kind of thing.
Right. And so
that's the idea.
And so within that sphere, they're allowed to, and also the other thing that plays into it is that, since women in the traditional patriarchal structure are dependent upon men,
yes,
they're not allowed to express anger at men. And what these subtle forms of misandry, where you infantilize men within the domestic sphere, and you either treat them as, in some benignly demeaning way. That's a way of releasing that resentment of being a servant, basically, to the patriarchy.
Exactly. And that's that's what sitcoms do. So many sitcoms, especially sitcoms in the 80s and 90s, and so many commercials. And that's exactly it. It's like I'm thinking Married with Children. I'm thinking any number of family-centered sitcoms. I mean, there are some that stand out as not doing that, specifically not doing that. But for the most part, that's the norm.
Right. So Levine says, when she's talking about, she has a series of these ideas, these, well, let me really find it in the book, how she describes it. There are various cliches or stereotypes related to men that fall into this misandry thing. So they're one style.
It has to do with like domesticating them being a demeaning thing, or?
Well, there's 3 broad categories of these stereotypes. One is called the infant, and there are versions of that called mama's boy, the babbler, the bumbler, and the invalid. And these are all various infantilized, dependent, emotionally crippled men that have to be helped in their expression of emotional means by a woman.
Okay, right.
Right. Because this is the other thing. It's not just domestic areas where men are seen within patriarchy as being incompetent, but also emotional things. Women are within patriarchy. It's okay for women to be emotionally superior to men. That's their job. They're emotional creatures.
Right. They're the nurturers, and men can't express emotions usually. At least in this patriarchal society, they can't express the kind of emotions and be open with other men. The only person often that they can be open with emotionally is their female, partners, their domestic partners. And so when they're domestic, that's when they're open and in that way. So that's a good point too. And that's a way of getting deeper into this particular trope too. Like you see the trope all over the place, but then you also, if you think about it in a more deep way, which we've been doing with all of these, particularly the masculine tropes, you can see how that's even deeper. If we go there, we're like, oh yeah, well, he's not allowed to express emotion anywhere else in his life. He's not allowed to do that. He's not allowed to be open and be weak and be anything else anywhere else except for at home. And usually his home, at least in the patriarchal society, the idea is that you're at home with a woman as the maker of the house, the homemaker.
Right. So
yeah, that totally makes sense.
That's the interesting thing. This is, I think, where feminism, this unacknowledged ambivalence towards men, where feminism is failing to open the door wide enough for men to realize, oh no, it is a good idea to reject patriarchy, because we have these man-hating, these misandric tropes directed at men when they step into spheres that have, according to patriarchy, been dominated by women. And this is a good way of showing how...
Oh, do you think that Arnold Schwarzenegger in charge of the kindergarten class is a kind of an example of that? Even though that's not a Mr. Mom thing, but that's still the kind of
I think it would fall into this trope.
A woman's,
Yeah, I think that would fall into this trope as a Mr. Mom, because he's stepping into, particularly as a kindergarten teacher, into an arena that is almost 100% dominated by women.
It's called a pink collar job, actually, which I think is amazing. and it's all utter chaos, and he can't handle it, and all that kind of stuff, and that's funny.
Right. And what that does is like I said, this goes back to, this is one of the things about patriarchy is that in order for patriarchy to maintain its control and its dominance in society, it has to give those primarily oppressed people at least one relief valve to direct their anger so that they do not burn the whole thing down physically, which they should. They should. And it also that allowing that arena and that area for hatred to be directed at the people at the top also makes it impossible for the people at the top to step into these roles, because those roles are hated. They perceive, this is something that I've struggled with my entire life, is
well, the roles are hated, but also you get demeaned. Hardcore demeaned if you step into it as a man.
That's where that hatred is in that, and you already are in a way kind of hated for being at the top to begin with. And then to step down from the top, you're stepping into another arena of hatred and into a space where you're going to be labeled as incompetent.
This is where I would like to ask all of your listeners who are of color to step in and give their voices, because I don't really know what to say about that, but I would be interested to hear about how being men and women, I'm just thinking about binaries at this point, because that's what this trope is kind of about, is about the binaries.
Right.
How the binaries of color, is it similar? Is it different? Is there anything that like changes about this trope if it's a group that's again, like oppressed over again, like another layer of oppression?
Well, that would be interesting, because we would have a good example of this if either one of us had seen the Eddie Murphy movie, Daddy Daycare.
Oh, I did not see that. You're right. That's a really good point. Thank you for bringing that up.
How does race change this trope? Maybe that's something we should watch and at some point and consider how that would affect this. I believe that was Eddie Murphy, Daddy Daycare. Let me double check.
I don't remember. I remember the title of that movie. And as much as I don't want to make my white voice a voice for people of color, I also want to do more research about each trope that I haven't written yet too. So I think that's going to be a very important part. Maybe if I can look at that and go, I think there are some interesting ideas here. Please, readers and listeners of color, I would like you to pipe up and also write with me.
Yep. Eddie Murphy, Daddy Daycare. That's another one I think you might want to check out.
That was in the 80s too, right? Was that in his heyday?
No, that was 2003, actually.
What? Oh, it was really recent.
While his wife, Kim, brings home the bacon, unemployed Charlie spends his days caring for the couple's young son. With the help from a friend, Phil, Charlie decides to start a daycare center. Enrollment quickly surges, and as they add another employee, Goofy Marvin, Steve Zahn, Charlie finds himself dealing with endless red tape. Will he be able to keep the business afloat, or will parents defect to Mrs. Harridan's, played by Angelica Houston, her daycare center? Oh, my God.
Mrs. Harridan? Are you serious?
Yeah. It has Eddie Murphy, Jeff Garlin, Steve Zahn, and Angelica Houston in it. Why haven't we seen this?
Wow.
Daddy Daycare. Yeah.
Okay.
So that might be something to look into related to this trope,
Yeah, and I would like to look at other things. It's a definite
Mr. Mom type of situation.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would want to see if color has anything to do with this, or if it's just a man versus woman thing in that particular plot case.
Well, even if it does, I think even if it doesn't nakedly deal with race, the fact that it's Eddie Murphy, there's going to be that lens applied to it.
Sure. Yeah, there should be.
Especially since his primary, conflict, his primary nemesis in the thing is a white woman.
Right.
Which is supposed to be the epitome of, in our white patriarchal society, of motherly competence and
Her name is Harridan. That's interesting.
Yeah, I know.
And I also like to look at alternate movies or shows too, like My Two Dads. Do you remember that? I never watched it, but that's a very interesting, totally not nearly as progressive as you might think if you have never seen it before. But
you could also probably take a look at Three Men and a Baby as an example of the Mr. Mom trope.
Yeah, totally. Yep. Okay. Well, this is all fascinating. But I think the trope itself is pretty easy to describe, right?
Right.
And it's pretty easy to come up with examples. And I think these other alternative examples are interesting too. And again, I do want to see how other types of oppression play into this particular one as well.
I think the most important angle to deal with isn't necessarily how it demeans men, but how it, within that patriarchal act of demeaning men, it reinforces our assumptions about women as being the better, child caregivers.
Well, it reinforces gender roles in particular.
Right.
It reinforces them and makes them law. Like, the man does not belong in the house.
Right.
The man can go out to the grill, and that's fine.
Right. Or he can go to work, but he can't
go to work and come home.
And it's interesting. There was a I don't know if it was AT&T or if it was the local cable company Cox here in this region. I don't know who the cable provider is in Colorado. I don't think it's Cox, is it?
The cable, it's
cable TV.
Comcast.
You have Comcast there. We have Cox here. Monopolies.
It's basically Xfinity. It's just.
But there was a few years ago. There was this thing. There was one of the ads that it was one of these cable companies had, where it was talking about setting up a home Wi-Fi network.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
And the mother and the children had that shit down pat. They knew how to do it. And Dad was the idiot who didn't know how to do it.
Yep.
And I'm sitting there looking at that going, in this family construct, I wonder which one of these three people actually has a job in IT. Because of the way they cast the dad, he looked like he was the kind of guy I would run into in an IT department. But somehow when he comes home,
he can't handle
handle home Wi-Fi. That's
because it's home.
Because it's handled at home, right?
Yeah.
And you see, but you're right. I think when you say that a lot of this is, there are versions of this trope that play themselves out in advertising more than anywhere else. Mr. Mom, the husband comes into the domestic sphere attempting to do what we traditionally assume to be women's work and failing miserably, or has to do it in a uniquely masculine way in order for it to not, appear to be feminine or less than.
Or has to be guided by, like in that Alexa or Siri or whatever the hell commercial that is, like, be guided by the mom. The mom has to be there to mother him.
Right.
And that's the only way he can actually do it.
Did you ever, there was recently something I saw, and people kind of blindly promote this type of shit. I recently saw someone sharing a meme or something online, or they saw something where they were like, look at this neat thing this dad did. And what he did was he took one of those giant, like, shop toolboxes that stands like 4 feet tall and has all the drawers on it and has a lid that pops open for stuff like this. And he turned this giant fucking toolbox into a diaper changing station.
Okay, well, that's cool.
Okay, cool. But, you know, fucking baby stores where women go have giant fucking diaper changing stations.
Yeah, and they look probably a lot like toolboxes.
But, but it's just so cool that this dad was apparently, the implication being that he was so insecure about changing a child's diaper at a white or a pink or a baby blue, baby changing station, that he had to go out and take a toolbox to make himself feel comfortable changing a poopy diaper.
Right. You're right about that. And actually, that also reminds me of the now starting to spread movement of changing stations being put into men-only public bathrooms.
Is there a backlash to that?
No. Well, not really. No, actually, it all seems like it's all very. Everyone wants it. It seems like it's all great.
Yeah.
So
no, I would say that's
really
a good
too.
thing. That's nothing we need to.
But it's like why is I think that's fantastic. But it's like, okay, so that's interesting. So why are there no baby changing stations in men's bathrooms?
Right.
We can of course question why there are men's and women's bathrooms to begin with. I mean, not that I want to walk in on somebody with their dick out at a urinal, but that's beside the point. The point is, if they're just stalls, then you're good. But anyway, it's like why were there never any baby changing stations in men's bathrooms?
Because
really
men don't do the baby changing.
Because men don't do that, right? Exactly. So I just thought that was interesting too. But that's a good point.
There are I've seen a few diaper changing stations. Baby changing, diaper changing. You put the baby on the table. Let's make him purple. Baby change.
Don't change your baby. Your baby is beautiful as it is.
What I see in a lot of places around here is you'll have a men's room a women's room, and a family restroom.
And a family room. No, there's that too, especially when you have like gyms and stuff.
Oh yeah, department stores and things like that. Because
that's for like the dad who has his little daughter.
Right.
So the dad can't go into the women's restroom, but he can't send his little daughter into the women's by herself. So yeah,
that's something that worries me. Is and it's something that we have to work on. That we have to find a way to. One of the reasons. Well, we have to break down patriarchy for this reason alone. We have to make it so that men are not by default seen as creepy.
Exactly. Yeah. That's really what it is too, right?
Because whenever you have children and a single man comes up, everybody's on guard.
Right.
But if you have
what if that guy is a dad? Like, well, how come he can't just be loving, like Paul is a total baby monster. He loves all babies. All babies are his babies.
But they are by default creepy to women who don't know them because they don't know what the dude's up to. Whereas women walk up to babies and everybody's like, okay, yeah, you're a woman.
Yeah, sure, hold it.
Hold it, whatever. We're not going to worry about we're not going to worry about the woman that wants to touch and squeeze babies because that's what women do.
That's what women do. Don't ever give me your baby, by the way. Never hand me your baby.
Yeah, never mind that is just as many abductions are committed by women as by men.
Yeah. Well, that's because it's easier for women to get away with it.
Right.
I'm not saying don't hand me your baby because I'm creepy. I'm saying don't hand it to me because I'm not.
You're not maternal.
I'm not experienced. I'm not maternal. Anyway, but yeah, no, that's a good point too. And actually, I think even more than patriarchy, although certainly patriarchy plays a part in this kind of culture, but it's rape culture in particular.
Oh yeah,
not just patriarchy, but actually the part of this particular kind of patriarchy, which is rape culture, because that's exactly why we assume a man is going to be creepy, especially to a little girl, but to little kids in general, is because of rape culture.
And rape culture is all about, enforcing the power dynamic, the power hierarchy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Sex is part of power.
It's terrorism. It is a form of terrorism.
Absolutely. Catholic priests.
Right.
But,
But they rape little boys. I mean,
that's what I mean.
But this is a different kind of... I'm speaking particularly about rape of women as terrorism. Rape of boys...
Rape at all is terrorism.
Well, rape at all is violence and power structure, but I think...
Well, a rape culture is that. And I point at which, I don't know. We can go into that. That's a whole nother podcast.
That's a whole nother podcast. The rape of boys versus the rape of girls.
But also just talking about how the male structure, the male only structure within Catholic Church and la 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 la. But anyway, it's rape culture. But yeah.
Yeah, the Catholics are going to write to us in mass right now.
So so here's the thing. I'm bringing it back to the trope now. I'm bringing it back to the trope because I don't want to talk about rape because it's depressing to me, but we have to talk about it anyway. But anyway, My point is, so the Mr. Mom trope. So is it largely, actually, pretty much only a comedic trope, right? There's no pathos in the Mr. Mom trope. The Mr. Mom trope is ha ha ha, like I said in the paragraph, lol. How funny that the guy is trying to be a dad.
Right.
Because if it weren't funny, then it would be this thing that we're talking about, which would be super creepy, which would be dangerous, which would be any number of other awful things that we can think about that happen in a rape culture. So because we don't want to do that, then I don't think
Mr. Mom ties into rape culture at all. The reason that it's seen as funny ha ha is again because this trope is not
it doesn't acknowledge men's ability to nurture.
It is not a direct way of, so unlike a lot of our other tropes, excluding the sassy gay friend, which goes back to which is slightly different about switching the focus. The focus of this trope again is switched from our first 3 or 4.
It's switched to the reaction of others to the character as opposed to the character himself.
Because whereas like sassy gay friend was switched to that point where we are establishing the patriarchy by demeaning others. Right? It's taking, it's
feminizing and all that kind of stuff.
Right. Where the point of the sassy gay friend is to reestablish the dominance of patriarchal
hegemonic masculinity.
And not only that, but hegemonic heterosexuality, the standard of heterosexuality by casting gay people as secondary characters, no matter what.
Well, that's part of hegemonic masculinity is heterosexuality. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
This one, Mr. Mom, also is one that switches the focus. Rather than saying men must be big, must be stoic, must be violent, must be aggressive, what this is doing is it's saying toxic masculinity as we see it in these previous tropes, excluding sassy gay friend, but heterosexuality, men as we see them, these other things, it's okay to mock them in this arena. Here is it's toxic and it's problematic in that it promotes an idea of masculinity that on one hand paints men as incompetent in the domestic sphere, but reinforces the idea that only women are capable and competent in the domestic sphere. And what that does is that it reinforces those unspoken, unarticulated misandric views that make women comfortable in accepting the patriarchy. I think the best way to kind of get at that,
and it reinforces the nuclear family myth as well.
So here's something from Judith Levine that I went and I found out. This is why I needed an extra 20 minutes.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So she writes about it this way: practically languageless, and she's talking about misandry, these man-hating tropes. Practically languageless. Gagged by self-censorship. How does man-hating express itself? An illegal alien, even in exile. Where does it live? How does it dress and behave? Part 1 of My Enemy, My Love, Images of the Enemy, explores these questions with the taxonomy of man-hating, a collection of women's negative and ambivalent stereotypes of men. My aim is not to judge the accuracy of any of these types, not to ratify any representation as truth. For being stereotypes, none is altogether accurate or truthful, but rather to examine what they look like and what they mean and how they function.
Right.
Some of these portrayals are almost protective of men, others no less than mutilating. Often, as I've suggested, the uglier aspects of hatred are cosmetically improved. Pity takes on the veneer of compassion. Ridicule dons the finery of affectionate amusement. And sexual rage is neutralized into romantic sparring or polite indifference. Together, the stereotypes are a babble of competing, often opposite female claims as to what men are like. Their very anarchy is evidence of women's ambivalence.
I was talking with Dr. Bell on the Deconstruction Workers podcast about the problematic badass female tropes. We talked about all 7 of them in one episode. And he talked about the very end of it when we were at the end of all of those tropes about what he called, because he's a total scholar. He's like, his entire doctorate, his whole thing is about portrayals of women and girls, especially girls, in pop culture media. So he's like a total fucking scholar about this whole thing. And he calls it toxic femininity or toxic feminism. And he was talking about that. It was almost in those terms too. That was really interesting. And it's like, where does the toxic femininity come in? And how is it a reaction to these, like, not only these tropes, but the other tropes too. And like, and basically patriarchy.
Right.
Yeah. He called it toxic femininity.
And one of the things we have to look at when we look at Mr. Mom as a toxic masculine trope is the way that through humor it allows women to express, mask, hide, subvert, and even indirectly refuse to acknowledge their own hatred and ambivalence towards the men in their lives. It keeps them at a distance, at a remove. What this does is that it enables us to keep ourselves from actually seeing the other person clearly. Right? It's an act of separation. Patriarchy, the misogyny and misandry are both acts of separation.
Yeah, and I would say even more than that, though, what it's doing is it is removing the man from the domestic sphere, though.
Right. Exactly.
By mocking him, infantilizing him, and or feminizing him, it's keeping him away from doing that very important work that is raising children, being in the home. That's a lot of fucking hard work. Anyone who's a parent can tell you.
Exactly.
I don't have that experience, but I can totally see
I know plenty of parents
who are
both men and women who are working as single parents, and the idea that
it's an insane amount of work.
That men cannot be domestically agile is ridiculous. But what
nurturing, what it does, it also ties back into the Stoicism one. What was that, number two, I think?
Yep.
So it ties directly back into that too. I think that the Mr. Mom trope is directly linked to number 2, which is that you should not be the soft one at home.
Right.
Caring for the little babies and loving the little babies and doing all the
foraging
dirty,
and hunting and
kind of dirty work. Yeah. Your kind of dirty work is to be strong and to be, the number 1 trope, and to go out into the world and come back and expect to be served by your wife, because it has to be a wife in hegemonic masculinity, right?
Yep.
And to not show that kind of nurturing, softer feelings towards your children. And why would a dude want to have a diaper bag with little ducklings on it? Because that's not, it's like, well,
yeah, but he would do it if
so
it had
why
like
is that okay?
sports on it,
right?
Had a diaper bag with the Steelers logo on it, then it would be okay for him to carry it. If it was a diaper bag that looked like a tackle box, then it would be okay.
The toolbox that you were talking about,
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
You must code for the appropriate gender, and maybe we need to go through a phase.
Codes, yeah.
Maybe we need to go through a phase where that's acceptable. Maybe in our idealism, we are cutting off an avenue for progress. Do you see what I'm saying? We're making perfect be the enemy of good enough right now, right? So maybe in order to get men comfortable with the idea of doing domestic things, we need to start doing. Okay.
So let's put the changing stations in the men's bathrooms, and let's put the remote controls on the vacuums, and
not just that. Okay, hey, you've been in like Target or someplace like that, and you've been in like the tool section where you suddenly see there's a set of pink tools.
Oh my God.
Right?
Yes.
Right?
God damn it. Yes.
And I have never known a woman who bought a set of pink tools. They buy the regular fucking tools. Just because
they're
more
expensive, for one thing.
Right. But so what if?
Oh, here's the thing.
What if?
I actually get my razors from Dollar Shave Club, and all of the merch and all of the little literature that comes with the packages and all of that stuff is all totally geared towards men. All of the products are geared towards men. All of that stuff, and it's just like, look, I shave more of my body than any man I know.
No shit. We maybe do
even men who shave parts of their body. Like I still shave most of the square footage of my body. I would be a gorilla if I didn't shave like most. No, I don't grow a beard. That's one thing I don't do besides little tiny hairs here and there. But it's like, but yeah, Dollar Shave Club is cheaper, and there's they're not pink. Yeah. They're really high quality.
You're not paying a pink tax for doing a woman-centered thing.
No, but I'm getting all this like dude-centric like literature around it, and it's like, well, what if we can do that not with pink and not with total like the Pappy Jacks fake commercial, but what if it could be neither of those? What if we can just be like, hey, here's a lovely silver gray fucking razor handle that you can have your 4-bladed razor with that you need to shave your entire length of your legs with.
But what if you walked into, that section of the store that's geared for infants and toddlers, for maternity, the so-called maternity section? What if you walked into that thing and there was also a paternity section where
what if it wasn't called maternity or paternity? What if it was just called parenting?
Right, but what if you had? But just to in order to begin to change the view, right? because it is so hard to get men to step down from the pinnacle of patriarchy and realize that they actually have a benefit to do that. Because, like I said, we've talked about this before, how much harder it is to come down the ladder than it is to go up the ladder.
To strive up.
You can make all the arguments you want about the glass ceiling, and I agree, the glass ceiling does exist. I'm not trying to say it doesn't, right? But in a patriarchal society that values, certain things, it's much easier for women to climb up in one way or another than it is for men to find it acceptable to go down.
Yeah, or to call out awareness and stuff like that. It's easier for
what if we did have awareness within the baby section, the parents section of like Target? We had like strollers and playpens and diaper bags that weren't
kind of duty
baby blue or pink, or had weird little, flowery things on it, and instead made them look tough, made them look like toolboxes, made them look like they had, chromium diamond plate on them and stuff like that. So that guys are like, oh no, I'm carrying around this thing to change a kid's diaper, that has the binky in it and the
to make
baby
sure I have
wipes
my snacks,
and the snacks and the doodads. But you made it look like, tactical gear.
Yeah.
Right? That way it becomes oh, you're a dad. Okay. So maybe that would stop are you babysitting? No, I've got my tactical baby kit.
This is my fucking baby.
Right?
I'm
it's
parenting.
My fucking kid. I'm responsible for it. Here's my tactical, survivalist baby bag, right?
It does take Navy SEAL-like strength and ingenuity as far as what I've heard from people who are parents.
Shit. So did you see did you happen to watch the first episode of the TV series of Mr. Mom?
I have not done jack shit. You are way more researched and prepared for this essay that I am the one that's going to be writing than I am right now. So thank you for that.
I'm going to get a hold of a copy of My Enemy, My Love, one of the newer editions, and get that sent up to you. It's out of print again, sadly.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. Yeah. But I'll find one and I'll get it up to you. I think it's important that you give it a read. I think
I would really love to
inform
do that.
a lot of these two particular tropes. One of the ones we talked about before.
This one and which one?
Well, I think it'll inform all of them in general, actually.
Sure.
But this one specifically.
Okay, cool.
Just because, I
find that Bell Hooks' book, The Will to Change, is very pertaining to number 2 and number 7.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this is good. I need more research anyway, so this is great.
So
yes, send me one.
And then you can watch the Michael Keaton Terry Garr. By the way, Terry Garr is adorable.
She's really damn cute. Oh, are you finishing your wine?
I'm done. Well, this bottle got opened at my little pre-birthday party on Saturday, so I'm just finishing it off.
Oh, right. Oh my God, your birthday
is tomorrow.
Oh my God.
Yeah, we're recording this on October 7th. My birthday's on the 8th.
Hey, happy. You're so close to 50.
I will finish my 48th trip around the sun and start my 49th.
Oh man, you were almost a 50-year-old white cis heterosexual male.
I know. I mean, at any moment, the Fox News watching conservative gene's going to kick in, and I'm going to be unrecognizable, right?
So two of my good friends one of them's nearing 50. Well, we used to be a good friend. My ex used to be a friend. Now he's totally not. Never want to speak to him again. But and the other one is another person who is no longer part of my life. Either for similar reasons, actually. Not that I ever dated this other person, but they're both men, either nearly 50 or in their early 50s, and they're white and they're cis and they're hetero. Yeah. And they just went batshit. Oy. And me and my other friend just had this conversation. I don't know if you and I have talked about this too, but my other friend, this other friend of mine was a really good friend of the second friend. We'll just call him the Scotsman. To protect the not innocent at all. But so he was a really good friend of this guy for like years and years and years. So this friend of mine, we'll call him the mathematician. He is he's in his 30s though. So, he hasn't quite got to But we were talking about this. We were talking about how my ex went batshit crazy. He went flat Earth chemtrails crazy, right?
Wow.
And then this other guy, the Scotsman, turned like anti-feminist crazy. And we're like, what happened? What happens to you when you're a white cis male, hetero cis male?
Well, let's not overgeneralize it here, because I feel like I'm becoming even more. Listen,
this is what I'm saying.
This was so funny.
Is making me tell you about this. So this is what I'm saying. I'm saying that, like, if you are not conscious, well-educated, well-read, know and are intimate with in different ways, not just sexually, lots of women and other types of people than you,
right?
Then you are mostly safe from this.
We hope so.
There's a point at which, and this is what me and my other friend were like, why the fuck did that just happen? Why? These people are smart. Like, what happened?
Right.
And we were just thinking, it's easier to believe that the moon landing never happened. This case of my ex, easier to believe that the moon landing never happened than to believe that with all of the privilege that you have in that position in life, all of those privileges, that you are a failure. And that is where the meltdown begins. And actually, your recent blog post really made me think about that, because you were so reflective and you were so beautiful about just like really honestly looking inside and going, you know what? I just need to wonder about this stuff. Like, I'm still going to try. I'm still going to strive my ass off. I totally will. But like, just being able to own the fact that I'm failing, and I'm failing over and over again. And me and my partners had this conversation recently too. It's like how devastating that is, and especially when you're in a position of some kind of privilege, no matter what that is. It can literally drive you insane, or it can be completely devastating and plunge you into deep depression, or it can make you lash out against other people. It can make you go buy a automatic weapon because it's way too easy to do and go harm people that you feel are giving you harm. It can make you, go join an incel group where you feel a little bit better.
Okay, so what's the positive thing it can make you do? For fuck's sake, what's the positive thing it can make you do? Right?
The positive thing?
Right. Because that's the thing. That's the thing. The whole post.
The positive thing is easy, but it's not easy to see.
What, the positive thing is just to surrender into your mediocrity and die? I mean, that's unacceptable to me too. That was the thing.
No, not at all. Not at all. And that's the thing. Like, yes, you're right. Like, I'm not fucking mediocre. And you can either go insane. So okay. So for those that are not aware of what this is, I do have the answer. It's just not easy to see when you are at the point that you were in the blog post that I was talking to my partner.
Just a reference so the listeners can hear about this. What this is you'll have to go to my website, my website, jquinnmalott.com, go to A Wandering Road, which is my blog, and look up the first Saturday report for October. And there's my random thoughts section of the first Saturday report.
They're always very beautifully written,
is me struggling with the idea that I might possibly be a mediocre white guy who got lucky 10 years ago when my novel was published.
When your novel was published.
And
your novel's fucking good, by the way, but publishing has nothing, and almost nothing to do with being good.
Right. And I have to wrestle with the idea that, as society becomes more balanced, as society achieves what I, as a democratic socialist and a supporter of feminists of color, believe, which is that if you take gay women of color, right? Black, Asian, Hispanic, whatever you want, women of color who are at the bottom of our patriarchal structure because they are both gay, women, and not white.
That's three. That's not both. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, they are gay women and not white. These are the three things because, of course, at the top of the patriarchal structure is straight white male.
Yes.
So gay, not white female is at the bottom. If you take those people and you raise them up, you give them the same opportunities, access, and privilege that I had by virtue of the luck of my birth,
right,
then you will have a society where you cannot discriminate against anyone because of who they are, what their racial background was, or how they identify sexually or gender-wise or whatever. You do that. You make that society. You will have true equality. And I want that. But what that also means is that for a certain amount of white guys, because of patriarchy, they were allowed to ascend to great heights despite their mediocrity, despite being below average.
Yeah.
In intellectual regards, they were at least straight white males. So they got, and this is the thing that I'm having to struggle with. That's what that post was about, is that I have, and of course the other thing to keep in mind is the Antonio Salieri character from the musical
Salieri.
Amadeus, who is not the real Salieri, but a fictionalized version, who became insane and jealous with rage. I call
him the Richard III-ized version of Salieri.
Right, because he has an awareness of talent, but his own talent doesn't match it.
And he sees that. Additionally, he sees that talent in a little giggling, infantile little trickster bullshit, which is even more infuriating. He's like this inferior being.
Right. So what that post is me wrestling with is this idea that I may have to confront the fact, as a straight white male, that my expectations were set so high because of that, were falsely set high for my abilities, my talent, my capacity, were set so high that I don't have the talent to reach them. But at the same time, I have the awareness to recognize that.
To recognize it, yeah.
To recognize that there is talent out there, that talent does not have anything to do with race or gender or sexuality or sexual orientation. But I may not actually have the talent to match my awareness of it. So what then do I do? I can become bitter, like Salieri and Amadeus, and I can turn into an evil, vindictive, vengeful, hateful person.
And we see so many of them these days, don't we?
Or what? What do I do? Right?
Well, I mean, it's a simple answer, but it's not easy.
Yeah.
And that's that you just keep trying.
But that's not enough, because what that eventually does, you have the awareness, you have the lack of talent, and you keep trying and keep failing. You keep trying and keep failing. You keep trying and keep failing.
Yeah, but each time you try and fail, you learn something. Each time you try and fail,
that I'm a miserable, mediocre white guy. This is what I continue.
Not at all.
Right. So
everything you write, let's just talk about writing, since we're talking about you in particular. So every time you write something, you learn how to write better. Every time you make a query letter that gets rejected, you learn how to write a better query letter.
But if I have no talent, it's still not going to reach the plateau that I need to reach in a fully equal society. So what then do I do to prevent myself from becoming the kind of aggressive, violent, horrible monster that I don't want to become? How do I use my awareness? How do I channel that awareness into the right means so that the imbalance between my awareness and my talent does not become toxic? What do I do?
Okay. Right. So
I can't keep trying to make my talent more than what it is.
No, of course not.
That just leads to that resentment. But what can I do? Sure. What thing can I do?
The thing is that you're lucky in that you're striving for an artistic type of thing, which means that to get published actually doesn't have much to do with how good you are.
Right, but if you want to be read, if you want to be taken seriously, if you want to be a part of that community and engage with that community, and because you can't get published, you are continually shut out of that community.
Right. So
what do you do to find a niche within that community where where your talent doesn't matter, but your awareness does?
Right. So that's what I mean when I say keep trying. I don't mean that I mean that
right,
there are other
but for
ways
my awareness to count, I have to redirect where I'm putting my energies, and not into my lack of talent, but into something else. So where else do I put it?
You put it into networking. You put it into submitting more often than you do. You put it into taking the things that are finished and just getting them out. You put it into shopping for agents.
Then agents aren't going to like me. Agents have repeatedly not liked me. But you have
to do that. You have to do that like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. That's what I mean. It's not a matter of can you be a good enough writer to succeed. That's not the point.
No, but that's not the question I'm asking.
Especially when you have like this expanded competition at this point.
Right. But that's not the question I'm asking is how do I keep going? It's how do I find a way to
Oh, well, my answer was how to keep going. So
yeah, that's not the question. That's not the question. Because if I keep going,
because you keep going, you will keep going though. So
I'll continue to write, but at what point do I like going, okay, this isn't going to go anywhere because I can't polish a turd any more than I've polished it. You can't polish a turd into gold. It's still going to be a piece of shit, right?
Right.
So when do
so you're like, how do I know if it's a piece of shit or not?
Well, no, it's what do I fucking do to keep from turning into a bitter, angry, vindictive, vengeful person who goes out and tries to destroy the people who have the talent? What do I do? What do I direct my energies toward that will be constructive, that will allow me to participate in the community that I desperately want to participate in? That will not continue to remind me that I'm a mediocre white guy, but give me a means to where I can be something other than a mediocre white guy. Do I need to learn how to manage a business and therefore start a press and publish the people whose talent I do recognize as being superior to mine? Do I become the kind of instead become a I'm never going to get into the teaching thing anymore. And plus, in order to teach, you have to be published. You have to continue to be published. You have to. That's the way the system works.
Well, I mean, to get any
do I attempt because I have some facility for being an editor. Do I attempt to become a Maxwell Perkins and admit my failure as a writer and instead become an editor? But how the fuck? I missed the boat for becoming an editor,
I don't know how
too.
To do that. Well, maybe not. I mean, that's not necessarily too late for that. And I don't know the answer. And I don't know how to become an editor. I would do the same thing.
This is the thing because I don't want to turn into that fucking guy that's sort of going, because. Have you read Buckskin Cocaine by Erica Worth?
I have not.
She was that particular collection was published by Allworth Press, which is run by our friend Duncan Barlow from graduate school.
Oh, Duncan, yeah.
You need to read that book.
Oh, okay.
She is incredibly good. But I bring that up simply because I was going to use her as an example. I don't want to be the kind of person that says Erica T. Worth stole my spot.
Right. I do that all the time, especially in the theater world. It's so hard to not do that.
Sit there and go and point a finger at her and go, fuck that native cunt.
Yeah, you have my job. You have my, I know.
That would be all the time. Hideous to turn into that person because I think she is wonderful. I've been following her a lot lately and she has some very interesting things to say about how, indigenous culture and indigenous arts are portrayed and treated in our white society.
Ooh,
and
cool.
She is fantastic and she is brilliant. And I'm very interested in continuing to read her and follow what she says, not only because I think she has a fantastic insight into art and writing, but into the way her particular view of that fits into the culture, which I think is true. And again, it feeds into this whole thing. If you take, minority women of color and you elevate them to the same level as white men, then you have no reason. And, I don't want to.
There's a bigger playing field then too, though.
Yeah. I mean, like I said in that post, I think it's fucking wonderful. It is how marvelous is it right now that there are so many different voices that me as a straight white male who has been in a way kind of isolated and protected at the pinnacle, right? I suddenly get the opportunity to pick up a book by someone like Erica Worth and experience through her writing some empathetic connection as to what it must be like to be a Native woman in this country, what it's like to be a Native person of any kind in this country. That opens up this capacity for empathy that is...
It's a huge gift.
Exactly. It's a gift. It is a wonderful gift. And I don't want to, because I've reached age or infirmity or jealousy or darkness or bitterness or whatever, to turn into someone that would fucking hate somebody like that. That would be disgusting.
And you don't. But also, like, it is the whole eons long artistic question, right, which is like, God, I can't hate that guy, right, but he has my fucking job. God damn it. And like, it's nice that now it's not just that guy or that right, white guy or that older white guy that has my job. Now it's like it could be any number of people. But yeah, that's the eons long struggle of anyone who's in any of the arts. It's like, ah. Right. It's that. And I don't know that there necessarily is an answer to that, except just to keep trying. Yeah. And just to keep doing it. Have you seen the documentary called Who Gets to Call It Art?
No, huh? I
would highly recommend that. It all centers around, and I am a little tipsy at this point, and so I don't remember the name
Me too.
Of this particular guy that it centers around. But it centers around because it centers around this one guy, it centers around many of the pop artists of the late 60s, early 70s, where the pop art thing was huge and postmodernism kind of began, at least in the arts world. But it centers around this one guy who was not an artist. He was I would call him a producer. I guess I should call him a curator, maybe.
Maybe.
But he wasn't the artist. He was the guy that went around and talked to all the artists and put their work up in various places. He was the guy who all these artists who were completely cutting edge, doing completely new and brilliant things, who were voices that were not part of the sort of artist elite. They were the silenced voices. He was like, no, you know what? This stuff's fucking great. I'm going to put it up. And he caused lots of scandal and blah, blah, blah. But then he turned into this like the premier art producer of the time and of that particular sort of branching off of various art movements surrounding pop art. So it's called Who Gets to Call It Art. And it just centers around this one guy who is not the artist, but the guy who was always there. He was always there at the artists' parties. He was always there at the poets' parties. He was always there. He was the one who was like, you know what? You're awesome. I'm going to put your stuff up. Or you're awesome. I'm going to buy your work. You're awesome. I'm going to buy your work. You're awesome. I'm going to publish you. Like he was just the guy who was not doing it, but putting it up. And it was his vision. And it wasn't a matter that he couldn't do it, so he produced it instead. It was a matter of he probably could have if he had tried and wanted to, but he just had this incredible, I don't know what you call a palate, maybe? Right. Just like a culinary person. Like he had this incredible palate, and he just knew what was good. He knew what was important culturally. And he was the guy that all of these artists that we've heard of, artists like Warhol and Basquiat and all these guys that we've already heard of, we don't hear about. See, I don't remember his name. And the whole documentary is centered around him, right? Right. Of course, part of it's because of alcohol. But the other part is just that we don't remember him as much as we remember Warhol. Remember Warhol? Right. But we don't remember this guy. And this guy was the one who was putting everyone up at this time period. So anyway, I would say I would look at that documentary. I don't know that it's an answer to anything, but it will make your brain be stimulated, especially as it pertains to your blog post and our conversation right now. Just look at this whole film surrounding that guy, the guy, not the guy doing the art, but the guy making the art happen. Right. In a different way than producing it.
Who gets to call them Mr. Mom?
Who gets to call it Mr. Mom? Thank you. We did an alternative title. We got it. Yay. Cheers.
Right. So there we have it. Our discussion of the ill-formed paragraph on the Mr. Mom trope. We've come.
Oh, it's an ill-formed paragraph. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Sorry, that was not what I meant.
No, thank you. Thank you. No, that's fine. That's cool. Cool.
The vague.
They're not quite precise.
The not quite fleshed out description.
The rather bitchy and not at all structured. Bare bones of an idea, and not even that.
Yeah, right. I'm an asshole. What are you going to do?
No, you're not. I just made it worse than you did. I'm acknowledging it.
Ill-formed was a wrong word. It was the wrong word, but it was the only one that came out of my mouth. I'm sorry.
You're not entirely wrong. You're not entirely wrong. No, you're wrong. After
you know what?
I'm like, oh, you read the paragraph, and I was like, oh, that was all I wrote.
That was all you wrote. That was all. I thought it was more than that too. And no, that was all you wrote.
I have way more thoughts about it. Apparently, as you've all heard now. But
I just want you to know that here's the fun thing. So before we let the audience go, if they haven't already departed,
we'll never let them go.
Never let them go. I just want you to know that I managed to work into an essay today. I have to actually look it up because I don't remember the exact word that I used. Where is it?
Was this for Vautrin?
Yeah, it was working on the essays for that, and I had to send them out. And I actually managed to...
I'm liking the first one, by the way.
Oh, good. I'm glad you did.
Send me the others, too. I should submit to him, too, shouldn't I?
You should.
Okay.
So I managed to work into an essay. Okay, so are you familiar with Greg Dully from the Afghan Whigs?
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Not, yeah, somewhat.
He managed to work the word indubitably into a song.
Yeah, that's right.
I was like, yeah, that's how you fucking do it, right? You can work that into a song lyric. You're pretty fucking good.
I do know what you're talking about, yeah.
Now, mind you, the word is awfully close to the word prolapse.
Oh. What?
But I worked the word proleptic into a
proleptic?
Proleptic, which is related, which is a form of the word prolepses, which is, if you look it up, let me just find it here.
I'm using my phone for this call. I'm not going to look jack shit up. I have to do it all. I mean, I could go get my computer, but I don't want to.
It was in this section. I was writing about the stupid fucking Left Behind series.
Oh, God.
There we go.
Side note, while you're looking at that, I saw a tweet recently that asked the question, what immensely popular book series have you never read and are very glad and never will and are really happy about that?
So proleptic is a form of the word prolepses, which is in rhetoric the anticipation and answering of possible objections in rhetorical speech, or the representation of a thing as existing before it actually does or did so. Right? So in fiction, particularly by Gerard Genet, a prolepses is what we would call in the rather more brutal definitions that Wayne Booth gives us a flash forward.
Okay.
In fiction.
Okay.
Right. And oddly enough, it is, close. It does seem very similar to prolapse, which is like, what can happen to an anus, but okay, so I think we better quit now.
It can happen to an anus.
It can happen to
fiction. So what's before we close, this is a complete tangent, and Heather, totally, cut this if you want to. I can tell you what mine was in answer to that Twitter post.
Okay.
There's movies too, but that's different. So What are the book series or book series that are super popular that you're like, fuck that, I'm never going to read that, and I'm very proud of myself for never putting any of the time that I have in this short lifespan to that.
Well, anything by Dan Brown.
So you haven't read any Dan Brown? You just have that one thing that you get to quote.
I have. I attempted to read the Da Vinci Code and was so disgusted with how bad the writing was.
So how long did you get into Da Vinci Code, though? Because it means that you've read it.
A couple of chapters, and then I started skimming it and looking for bad shit.
Okay. So I don't know. Does that count as having read it, though?
And that was so easy to do, to find bad shit.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I've read that one.
I will never read any of that. I will never read the Turner Diaries.
Oh, okay. There we go.
Which is that racist shit. You know about the Turner Diaries, right?
I know about the Turner Diaries. I do. I have not read them either.
Inspired Timothy McVeigh to bomb the federal building in Oklahoma. Inspired the Aryan Nation to try and, start a race war in the 80s, and a couple of other white nationalist groups in the 90s to go on bombing and bank robbing sprees. There, yeah.
Yep, not read that.
I don't need to read that shit.
Nope. Mine was Twilight.
Yeah, you don't need. Nobody needs to read that.
I am a fan of. No, lots of people read Twilight. Lots.
But nobody should.
Of people read that. No, nor the 50 Shades spinoff.
Oh God.
Neither thing.
No. I'm satisfied. I'm satisfied having had Gilbert Gottfried read sections to me.
Oh my God, that was such a great fucking short. Perfection. No, that spinoff gives BDSM a bad name. It puts BDSM in an abusive light, and that's horrific and terrible, and gives so many people who don't know any better the completely wrong idea. Which, having just come out of an abusive marriage, I'm like, nope, fuck you. I mean, nope. But Twilight is kind of the same idea. I'm like, nope, vampires are cool. That's absolutely not cool.
Not cool.
So that's where I am. What about movies?
You should listen to your Mr. Mom about how bad that is.
Oh yeah, no, totally.
Okay, I think we've gone on too long and we're a little too drunk. So bye, everybody.
Oh really? Like that ever happens? Bye.
Bye. The Outrider podcast is orchestrated by me, Jason Quinn Malott, and audio production magic is performed by Heather Ann Eden. You can find the show online at jquinnmalott.com, and if you would, please hop on iTunes and give us a rating. We'll be back later in 2020 with more mini-series, live shows, and one-on-one conversations with writers, editors, and publishers. Thanks for listening.